This is chapter 14, lesson 2 and lesson 3. And in this, our learning goal is to divide decimals and whole numbers. Okay, because we can divide decimals by whole numbers and get a decimal answer. We can also divide sometimes whole numbers by whole numbers and get a decimal answer as well. Okay, so we are going to do those two things, divide a decimal by a whole number and also divide whole numbers by whole numbers to get a decimal quotient or a decimal answer. Let's review really quick. Let's talk about division. So when we divide, let me use black. Let's say we have 10 divided by 2 equals 5, right? Pretty simple. What are the different parts of a division equation? What is this part called here, the 10? The thing you are dividing. Arjun?
Dividend.
That's called the dividend. Good. Whoa, let's see if I can write it. I'm going to go with no. Hold on one second. So I'm going to type it. Let me erase that and I'll type it. Okay, this part is called the dividend. Very good. Okay, now this number that we are dividing by, 10 divided by 2, what is this one called? We have a dividend, we have a Atharva?
Divisor.
Divisor. Good. And then finally we have here our 5. 10 divided by 2 equals 5. What is this part called?
Quotient.
The quotient. Very good. Let's add that. Quotient. Very good. There's the quotient. Now, when I want to divide a decimal by a whole number, what does that mean? Is the dividend going to be a decimal or a whole number? If I'm dividing a decimal by a whole number, the dividend will be a what kind of number? Christian? So if I'm going to divide a decimal by a whole number. Good. The dividend would be a decimal. The divisor would be a whole number. And the quotient, would it be a whole number or a decimal, or it could be both? Which one? It could be either one. It could be a decimal or a whole number. Now, if I'm going to divide 2 whole numbers to get a decimal quotient, that means my dividend is going to be a whole number. My divisor is also going to be a whole number, and my quotient will have decimals. Good. So first, let's talk about dividing decimals by whole numbers. We know we expect our dividend to be a decimal, and we expect our divisor to be a whole number, right? Okay, let's read this problem. Eli rides his bike. I'm actually going to move it up so that we have more room. Eli rides his bike 8 times around a track. If Eli rides a total of 9.6 kilometers on the track, how long is the track? Okay, so how would we solve this problem? He's riding his bike 8 times total around, and we know the total distance he goes is 9.6 kilometers after those 8 times. So what's the question asking us? It's asking us how far does he go 1 time around the track? So what would the equation be to solve this problem? Sadvika?
96 divided by 8.
9.6 divided by 8. Good. So we can write it, whoa, that's not what I wanted. We can write it horizontally, 9.6 divided by 8. What is our dividend? What is our dividend here? Vienna?
9.6.
9.6. What is our divisor? Goni?
8.
8. And what's our quotient? We don't know yet. The quotient's what we need to find, right? Very good. Now, could I also write it, I know I can write division horizontally like this, right? But I could also write it like this, right? 9.6, there's the dividend, divided by 8. Whoa, why is it not writing? 8. That is my divisor, yes? Okay. Okay, so step 1 is to ignore the decimal point and divide. So we can ignore this and pretend it's 96 divided by 8. To do long division, we first look at the first place. In this case, it's the tens place. We say 8 goes into 9 how many times, Kevin?
What?
How many times does 8 go into 9?
Oh,
Once. So we put a 1 up here. Then we multiply 1 times 8 is 8. We write that here. Then what do? We subtract, right? 9 minus 8 is 1. And then we carry down this next number, which is 6. How many times does 16 go into 8 or 8 go into 16, Atharva?
2 times.
So we write it right here. Now, it's very important to line it up. Okay, you want to line up your place values. What's 2 times 8? 16. Subtract, do we get a remainder of 0?
Yeah.
Very good. So we know that 96 divided by 8 is 12. Step 2 says you put a decimal point in the quotient, so in the answer, directly above the decimal point in the dividend. So here is my decimal point in the dividend. I'm going to put a decimal point directly above that in my quotient. So how long is the trek? 1.2 kilometers. KM. Whoa. KM is the abbreviation for kilometers. Now, do you see why it's important to make sure you line up your place values exactly when you're dividing? Because you need to put the decimal point directly above where it is. Okay? Now, we are not finished because it reminds us that we need to multiply to check our answers. So if we know that 9.6 divided by 8 is 1.2, what multiplication equation can we do to check our answer? Vienna?
1.2 kilometers times 8.
1.2, I know you can't see, I'll move really quick, times 8. Good. Whoa. Okay, so let's multiply. 2 times 8 is 16. 8 times 1 is? Plus 1 is? How many numbers do we need in the decimal point? 1. 9.6. Is that the same answer?
Yes.
Check. Good. Okay. What if we have to divide $6.44 divided by 7? What's step 1? Riley, what's step 1?
Step 1 is to ignore the decimal.
Ignore the decimal point. So let's set it up. So 644 divided by 7. Okay, how many times does 7 go into 6? 0. So we have to move into the tens place, right? 64. How many times does 7 go into 64? Daniel?
9.
9 times. So would I write the 9 above the 6 or above the 4?
Above the 4.
Good, because we're dividing 64, right? So 9, good. 9 times 7 is? 9 times 7 is, Michaela? Huh? What would I do next? We said 7 goes into 64 9 times. Which is?
Is that
63. Good. I'll write that here. Then I subtract. 64 minus 63 is? 1. Bring down the 4, right? 7 goes into 14 how many times, Arjun? Good. So we know that 6, and then 2 times 7 is 14. Subtract that and we get 0. We can stop. Now, 644 divided by 7 is 92. But what's the problem we're trying to solve? Is it 644 divided by 7? Arjun?
It's 6.44.
Okay, so here's the decimal point, right? 6 and 44 hundredths. So where would I need to put my decimal point in my quotient? Sonal?
You'd have to put it right at before the 9.
Why would it be before the 9?
Because the 9 is directly above the 4.
Good, so I have to put it, I just moved the decimal point directly above where it was in the dividend. So my answer then is what? $6.44 divided by 7 is, hey Mon?
92 cents.
92 cents. Are we finished?
No.
Check to multiply. Very good.
Multiply to check.
I mean, yes, multiply to check. Very good. Archie, what multiplication equation could I write? 7 times 0.92. And what do we want it to answer? What do we want it to equal? Good. We want it to equal that. So let's do it. 0.92 times 7. 7 times 2 is? Carry the 1. 7 times 3 is, Michaela? 63 plus 1 is?
64.
Okay. Where do I put the decimal point? How many do I have in this factor? 2. How many do I have in the bottom factor? 0. 2 plus 0 is? So I want to have 2 numbers after it. 6.44. So we also need to talk about dividing whole numbers with whole numbers. So when the dividend is a whole number and the divisor is a whole number, but then your answer is a decimal. Because does every number divide cleanly and nicely? Do we sometimes have remainders? Rhea? Do we sometimes have remainders?
Yes.
Now, those remainders can be written as a fraction or as a decimal. So today we are going to learn what to do when we have a remainder and how to write it as a decimal. Here's a question. Laura, she will volunteer at the Special Olympics for how many hours? 3 hours. She will work at 4 different events. How many hours is she working?
3.
How many events will she work at?
4.
Okay. She will spend the same amount of time at each event. What part of an hour will she spend at each event? So what equation are we doing? She has 3 hours total, and how many events is she spending it at? How many events is she spending it at? 4. So, I'm going to use my laser pointer this time. Okay, so we know that the equation is 3 hours, right? And then she needs to divide it by 4 different events. So it's 3 divided by 4, right? So how many times does 4 go into 3? Can we do that? Can we do 3 divided by 4? No. So we have to make it, we have to add, we know because the dividend is less than the divisor, right? 3 is less than 4. The dividend is less than the divisor. So the answer, it will not be a whole number. Will the answer be more than 1 or less than 1? Because if I only have 3 things, but I want to divide it amongst 4 people, will they each have a whole piece or less than a piece? So we know that our answer will be less than 1. So the first thing we can do is, instead of doing 3 divided by 4, we can add a decimal point and put a 0. Because is 3.0 the same thing as 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if we do that, we know that we can divide, we can ignore the decimal point and divide, right? So can we do 30 divided, does 4 go into 30? We know that 4 doesn't go into 3, but does 4 go into 30?
Yes.
Okay. Hang on one second. My stylus is not being cooperative. Okay, so if we have 3 divided by 4, we know that the dividend is smaller than the divisor, yes? Okay, so 4 doesn't go into 3, right? We have less than 1. So we can add a 0.0 because we know that 3.0 is the same as 3. Yes? Okay. Now, we can ignore the decimal point and divide. So how many times does 4 go into 30 now? How many times does 4 go into 30? Ruba?
7.
Okay, so I'll write my 7 up here. That's the D for divide. M for mom or multiply. So 4 times 7 is 28. Okay, subtract. S for sister or subtract. 30 minus 28 is 2. Now, am I done or do I have a remainder? I have a remainder of 2. Can I add another 0 here? Is 3.00 the same as 3? So can I bring, for bro, can I bring down this 0? Okay. So now can I do 4 divided by, or 20 divided by 4? How many times does 4 go into 20? 5. So I would write the 5 up here. 5 times 4 is 20. Then I subtract, and what do I have? 0. Remainder of 0. So we know that 300 divided by 4 is 75. But what was my original problem? It was 3 divided by 4, right? So where do I need to put a decimal point in my quotient? Where do I need to put it? Directly above where it is. So my answer is 0.75. Okay? Or 3/4, right? 3 divided by 4. Do we know that that equals 75 hundredths? Am I done? What do I need to do? Okay, so if I have 3 divided by 4 equals 0.75, what can I multiply to check? Sakshi? 0.75 times 4. And what do I want it to equal? 3, right? So 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 4 times 7 is plus 2. Okay, my answer is 300.
No.
Where do I need to put the decimal points, Jonathan? Why do I need to put it here after the 3? Very good. There's 2 numbers after the decimal point. Check. Very good.